The basic thing about language learning is that it is, a long-term process which involves the learner being exposed to a lot of different types of content across different skills, and more importantly, for them to engage with all of that content across all the years that they would be learning that language. So in Mindspark, what we've tried to do specifically in English is that we have basically curated our content across different grade levels. And within that, what we're trying to do is give students equal exposure to all the different components of language, which is listening, reading, grammar, vocabulary, writing, and speaking. And within those, we try to have the content as granular as possible, and at the same time to have the child be able to sort of get equal exposure to the skills, so that they're rotating between those in a manner where they are not learning these skills independently of each other. Because the fundamental aspect of language is that it's not that I can say that today I learn nouns and I will have learned nouns and then I move to verbs. It doesn't work like that. So what we try to do is we try to have all of these language components kind of integrated into a seamless sort of mix for students. And within those, then what we try to do is provide teachers with the kind of information and insights that they would need to be able to remediate some of these concepts in class if the students are particularly struggling with, say, one or two subtopics within these skills. And what we've also tried to do is that in an adaptive sort of way, as students attempt more and more content in Mindspark, within, say, for example, reading, if a child is struggling particularly with reading but is doing sufficiently well on listening exercises, then the student would be taken to a lower level in reading while they may remain at the same level in listening, or they may even go to a higher level of learning in listening, for example. And within these skills, again, what our content team particularly has done is that when the students are asked questions, and of course, as we know, Mindspark's philosophy is to teach through the asking of more and more questions. So as students are asked questions, in the question itself, we do not try to ask very technical questions or things that the student may not have enough context of to be able to answer it. Like, I would never ask a question like identify the adverb in the sentence, because that it by itself is a meaningless question for the student. What we would ask the child to do is to find out what words are describing an action in the sentence. And then in the explanation, we would, sort of try to, dissect what happened in the question and explain how the inner working of the structure of language, basically. And we do this for all our questions. Like, we provide detailed explanations on each and every question, so that even, for example, when the student is going through reading comprehension and they are being asked an inferential question, we would try to then tell them, like, after they have answered the question, what part of the passage should they have been looking at for the answer, and how does the skill of inferring data from context actually work. So that's something that we do as part of our regular Mindspark flow. And outside of that, again, to make sure that students don't get disengaged with the core aspects of the product, we also provide games which students can access after having spent, say, 15-20 minutes in a day on the primary learning aspect. They can play games which are, again, tied to different kinds of skills on listening, reading. Like, for example, there's one grammar game which basically tells them to search for demonstratives inside like a haunted house sort of a thing. And there's another game which is like for them to be able to identify incorrectly spelled words through a car racing sort of an adventure. So we have multiple types of these games and introductions to help students get familiarized with concepts in a non question centric way as well. And recently we've also been coming up with new features to again help students to feel as if they are more in control of their own learning experience, So for that, we have something called a story builder feature. So what we've done there is that students can sort of select select from among multiple traits, strengths, weaknesses of characters, character types, what kind of ending they want the story to have, where do they want the story to be placed. And then based on all of these attributes that they select, and they can even name their own character, we've used AI to actually generate a customized story for the child, and also generate questions on that story, so the students feel more more in control of what they're reading, and they feel more excited when they're reading something which they have created. And secondly, it also helps them to understand how exactly a narrative is formed, how story narratives work. And that's one feature that we've built, and we're also experimenting with actually giving students feedback on questions. So we have certain subjective questions that we ask in Mindspark English. So in that, we normally we don't evaluate students on those questions. We let the student just express themselves, and then we give them like I would say a general explanation on how they could have answered the question. But now we're also trying to use AI to give them customized feedback on their response based on how, for example, if it's a question on creating a sentence using the word market. So then, based on how they've constructed the sentence, our AI prompted engine would give them feedback on whether or not they answered the question correctly or not, and then give them further recommendations. Another thing that we're working on recently is how to use AI for teachers as well. So, for example, we have these reports that are generated for teachers, and one common point that we keep getting from teachers is that they don't have enough actionable insight on that report. Like, suppose I've told the teachers that the students are weak at pronouns and active and passive voice, and say direct and indirect speech. So that data by itself is not actionable enough for them to actually go back to their class and do something with it. So what we're trying to do is integrate AI in a way where we can suggest activities based on weak skills, and let this teachers sort of print those out and use them in the classroom, and that can be something which they can keep doing regularly as part of the integrated Mindspark experience, where the classroom kind of flows into Mindspark and vice versa.